All right, good morning. So this week's quota is Siman Kuf and Kuf Aleph, Siman 100 and 101. So on the page, it looks like there's a lot because Kuf 100 has four sifim, it's four subsections, I'm sorry, and 101 has nine. So it sounds like a lot, but in reality, it's not a lot. It's not even usually, you could think of each siman as like one halacha broken down into a bunch of, one principle, and then the rest of the siman plays out the caveats and the limitations of that principle. That's kind of in the pattern. The first sif introduces a concept, and then you have the caveats and the limitations. Last week was a little bit more. We had like a few concepts coming together, the bones and the question of whether or not knowing in between has its effect. So there's a few different things that came together, which made last subject a little bit more elaborate. This week, it's both Siman are actually one subject. It's one subject, one concept that almost pretty much has the exact same rules. And they come from one principle divided into two. Now, what is that principle? The principle is as follows. We've been learning in the last few sifim about bittul v'shishim, right? What do the nullification by 60 to the ratio, and what is constitutes as part of the 60. When does it apply? When doesn't apply? If it's min bin minoy, if it's not min bin minoy, when does it biblically require 60 times the ratio? When does it rabbinically require 60 to the ratio? When do I count? Which items in the pot do I count as part of the 60? Which ones don't I count? That's what we've been learning about. That's the subject of actually most of Taruvis is part of that subject. It's what Taruvis is, mixtures and the nullification of mixtures, right? Okay. So Kuf and Kuf Aleph are going to be two items, two types that do not get nullified by 60, and both for the same reason. And that's because they are chashuv. Davar chashuv. There's going to be other ones. That's davar shebeminyan. That's not going to be our subject. That's going to come up in a later siman. Morning, Mayor. That's going to come up in a later subject. Davar shebeminyan and davar shebeminyan. That's going to be another subject. But kuf and kuf aleph is basically two types of things that are not nullified by 60. Actually, not even nullified by 1,000. They are never nullified. And the reason they're not nullified is because they always retain a certain level of chashivas, of value. That's essentially the idea. And it's a rather logical progression. I haven't seen this, what I'm about to share with you, I haven't seen it written anywhere, but it just seems to me to be correct. The whole nullification business, right? There's two levels to the nullification, let's say. And one is, let's say, on tam, and one is on ikr, shall we say. On tam, when you're talking about nullifying flavor, it's a question of whether or not the flavor is identifiable. Okay. And we have our 60 to the ratio thing. If it's min bin minoy, it's biblically, it's not identifiable even unless we require the 60. Okay, but you're trying to overwhelm the flavor. When you have the ikr itself, when you have the other thing itself, when you have the item itself, not just the flavor. So what are you trying to do in nullification? What are you trying to achieve in nullification? What you're trying to achieve is that what you have in here is so insignificant to the totality that we're not even going to consider it as problematic. Because not only is the flavor nullified, its very existence is insignificant anymore. Right? So you have an ounce of milk being mixed into 60 ounces of your challah pot. That ounce of milk is insignificant. It's not tam. It's not the flavor that's being nullified. Certainly the flavor must be nullified. But even the ikr is being nullified. Even the very milk itself is being nullified. Because at this point, it's so insignificant. So if what you're trying to do is overwhelm the prohibited item to such a degree that it's insignificant, if it retains its significance even after it's overwhelmed, then it's not going to be nullified. Because this is the logic I'm applying to it. I haven't seen this written anywhere, but this seems to be correct in the thinking. Because of their value, because even after you overwhelm them, they retain their value. They retain their status as valuable. So they're overwhelmed, but not nullified. And thus, even if you add 1,000 to the ratio, you haven't nullified its value. They're still significant. They're still important. And thus, never nullified. That's Kuf and Kuf Aleph, 100 and 101. I'm going to start with the second one first, and then go back to the first one, just in there what they are, and then When I get back to the first one, we'll get the details of the first one and then the details of the second one. Namely, the second one is Chaticha Royal Iskabit. That's Kuf Aleph, 101. Chaticha Royal Iskabit, which we translated in the past as a piece that is worthy of honor. The word liskabed, which means honor, also means to serve. Like when you serve guests, you call it kibud, right? You have a song invitation, it says kibud cow, light refreshments. Kibud means to serve. So it's the kind of thing that's, good morning, Binyamin, that's worthy of serving. So because it's something that it's worthy of serving to somebody, to a guest, so it never loses its significance because it's still worthy of its own presentability, if you want. That's Kuf Aleph. So that, the Chashivas, why I'm starting with that one, is because it flows more directly from the idea I just explained to you. Because this is a food item that still retains its value on a very physical and a very edible, what's the right word? Like in a very physical way, it retains its value.
Tangible.
Sorry?
Tangible.
Tangible, yes. It tangibly retains its value because this piece of meat I would serve to somebody on its own. So the fact that I happen to have 1,000 other pieces of meat and it's overwhelmed doesn't nullify its value. I would still serve it to somebody. That's Kuf Aleph. Kuf is a little bit more theoretical because here it's what's called beria. Beria means, hard to translate the word, beria means it's a creation. It's a full self-contained creation. Now, this is a little bit more theoretical in terms of it not losing its value, in that the value here is more halachic in nature than it is in tangibility. The case of Chaticha Leskabet Kuf Aleph is not a halach. The fact that something is worthy of being presented to a guest is not a halachic definition, not a halachic designation. It's a human designation. And as we're going to see, it's actually subject to culture. If culturally speaking, this is the kind of food that you would serve to a guest, it doesn't get nullified. If culturally speaking, it's the kind of thing you would never serve to someone as an individual item, it would be nullified. So actually the culture makes a difference here because it's a tangible human significance. I would serve it to a guest. Kuf Aleph. But Kuf, it's not like that. It's much more theoretical. It's a halachic significance because this thing is a created, self-contained thing. Beria. So let's dive into Kuf, Beria, the details of that, and then we'll go into Chaticha Royal Iskabed, Kuf Aleph, the food that has significance because I would serve it to a guest. So the Gemara on two occasions makes direct reference to the fact that Beria, a complete created item, isn't nullified. And then the third, indirect reference. As a result of all these three references, they are, just by the way, if you're curious, one is about Gid Hanasha, the sciatic nerve, that it's a beria, it's a thing that's created as is, or it's like a creature. You want to translate the word beria as a creature? Just going to use the Hebrew word.
Entity is probably.
Sorry?
It's a good enough, it's not an entity.
Yes, but okay, you'll see why I'm saying creature. But it's an entity, yes. Okay, it's a self-contained entity. So we trade. That's the way we're putting it. It's self-contained entity. Halachically speaking, a self-contained entity. It's a good way of translating it. Okay, so the first is Gid Hanasha. The second example the Gemara gives is a bird. A bird. And the Gemara discusses kosher bird versus a non-kosher bird. Is the bird alive? And therefore it's also because of Ever Menachai. This is the indirect reference. Because there the Gemara doesn't make direct reference to the beria, but it's indirect reference because of the way the Gemara classifies the amount required for it to be prohibited when it's alive versus when it's dead, where it's a kosher animal, not kosher animal, not kosher bird. That's item 2. And item 3 that the Gemara describes is namala, as a worm. So those are the 3 items.
That was an ant, right?
An ant? Yeah, okay, let's say an ant. I thought it was a worm. They translate it as an ant there?
Yes.
Okay, an ant, we'll take an ant. It's the same difference. Okay, so Gid Hanasha, sciatic nerve, the bird, and the ant. Those are the 3 examples in the Gemara. And in each of these cases, the Gemara puts limitations and gives us different definition for what constitutes a beria, the self-contained entity. And depending on how you interpret those Gemaras, lead you with different limitations on what exactly constitutes as a beria and therefore will not be nullified, and what doesn't constitute as a beria and therefore will be nullified. And it leaves us with a totality of 4 limitations, all of which are brought in the Gemara lahalacha, in the Shulchan Aruch lahalacha. In other words, the whole notion that something isn't nullified is a rabbinic notion. Right? Biblically speaking, you have roiv. Right? Biblically speaking, you need 2 things. You got to get rid of tam, biblically speaking, and you have to have roiv. You have to have a majority, biblically speaking, which is why min bin minoi, where there's no flavor issue to begin with, because they're both the same food item, all you need is roiv, biblically speaking. Only rabbinically you need 60. Okay, so the whole notion that something is not nullified is a rabbinic notion. And therefore, as we're going to see, even after we introduce the fact that these things are not nullified, we're going to constantly be limiting them and saying it's only not nullified if it qualifies completely by every single criterion as a beria, as a self-contained entity. And if one of the criteria don't match, it's nullified. And in certain cases of doubt, which we'll discuss, also we're going to be lenient because it's rabbinic, right? And such limitations. So what are the 4 conditions? Here are the 4 conditions, the 4 criterion that are required in order to constitute a beria, a self-contained entity that isn't nullified. Number 1, it's something that has life in it. All 3 of those things have life. The sciatic nerve came from a living animal. The bird is a living thing, and so is the ant or the worm. Yeah, the ant. Let's use the ant. No, at its creation it was alive. Now it's dead. Yes, but its creation it was alive, as opposed to a piece of wheat, which is, let's say, self-contained. I haven't touched it. It's exactly the way it was when it was created. This kernel of wheat, and it's arla. Let's say not arla. It's truma. It's nicer, and I can't gnaw to eat it. It wouldn't constitute as a beria because it wasn't a living thing at its point of creation.
Right, or a part of a living thing.
Or part of a living thing. Yes, correct. So that's number 1. Condition number 1. It's got to be a living thing. Condition number 2. It's something that was forbidden from the beginning point of its creation, as opposed to something that became prohibited. Okay?
Meaning it's
Right?
usher by definition.
Correct. As opposed to a kosher animal that wasn't slaughtered properly.
Well, what
Kosher animal that wasn't slaughtered properly only became not kosher in point of slaughter.
what non-living thing was designated trait from its onset?
Arla,
Oh, okay.
let's say.
Okay.
Right? But a bird or an animal that wasn't shechted properly doesn't count. It wasn't not kosher from the time of
That's not a
creation.
living thing.
It's a living thing.
There's something
So it has the first criterion, not the second one.
right.
So-
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what it's
It has to have all 4 criterion.
all 4.
Yeah. It's like you're saying the Shulchan Aruch combines all the 4 criterion taken from the Gemara and based on the Rishonim's interpretation of the Gemara. Okay, so number 1, it's got to be a living thing. B, it is non-kosher from the point of its creation. Number 3, and this is where the halachic thing comes in. It's the kind of thing that it only has its title as a non-kosher item while it's whole. If you cut it in half and it still has the same title, halachically speaking, it doesn't constitute. For example, non-kosher fat. This is not an English thing. This is a halachic designation. The word in the Shulchan Aruch is going to be shame, is the name. Right? It still retains its name. Or sorry, it loses its name if you cut it in half. Then it's considered a full thing before it's cut in half. What does it mean losing its name? So explain. If you take chaylev, non-kosher fat, and you cut it in half, how would you halachically refer to that thing?
Piece.
No, it's chaylev.
Yeah.
It's still chaylev.
But
Yeah.
but chaylev is part of the forbidden
Correct.
issues.
So no matter how much of it I have, it's always going to have the same halachic designation.
Not
Forbidden
kosher.
chaylev.
Right.
And therefore, because it always retains its name as a same designation, even if it were to be parsed in half or a quarter, therefore, when it's whole, it isn't different than when it's in half. It's the same.
But does chaylev have anything different to do with like if
1 second,
not kosher chicken?
No. Let's explain something. We're trying to say that over here something has halachic significance as a self-contained entity, and because it's a self-contained entity, it's never going to be nullified. Now, something that is going to retain its same status even if you chop it in half doesn't mean it's a self-contained entity. It's not a self-contained entity, because what's the difference between a full piece of fat or a half piece of fat or a quarter piece of fat? No difference halachically. It's the same designation. And because it's the same designation, therefore, whether it's full or whether it's half, it's no difference. And therefore will be nullified even if it's full. Only the kind of thing that when you chop it in half, it loses its halachic designation and name. Do I say that before it's chopped in half, it's a barrier that can't be nullified? So as Taz puts it, quoting from, who was it? Quoting from, I don't remember. But Taz puts this, says this. It means like this. If you take let's say an Aver Menachai or a Gedan Asha. Let's use the Gedan Asha. You take a Gedan Asha, sciatic nerve. It's one of the examples the Gemara gives as a barrier. You cut it in half. What would you call it now? Halachically speaking, you wouldn't call it a Gedan Asha. You would call it part of a Gedan Asha. When you're eating an ounce of fat, you don't say, oh, this is a part of fat. It is non-kosher fat. So whether it's full or it's half, it's the same. And if when something is full and half, it's the same, it doesn't get unique status as full and therefore could be nullified even when it's full. It's only something that's uniquely status at full do I say it's not nullified at full. Like a Gedan Asha, when you cut it in half, it's not a Gedan Asha anymore. It's a half a Gedan Asha. Same thing with Aver Menachai, same thing with a bird. And the same thing with the bird is enough. Same thing with insect. It's a half an insect. It's not an insect anymore. With chaylev, you don't say half chaylev. It's chaylev. Okay, so condition number 3. This is like much more theoretical halachic thing. That's what I'm saying. It's a halachic designation as a self-contained entity. Living, come from a living thing, forbidden from the time of its creation, not became forbidden later. And it's the kind of thing that has a unique position when it's whole, halachically speaking. If its halachic status is the same when it's whole, and I should say status, its halachic designation is the same when it's full and when it's cut in half, then it's not unique when it's full, and therefore could be nullified even as full. That is condition number 3. Condition number 4 is that it has to be currently full, currently whole, currently complete. If it's a half a Gedan Asha, then it's going to be nullified. And you apply shishim, and it could be nullified. If it's a half a Aver Menachai, it's going to be nullified. If it's a half an insect, it's going to be nullified.
Right, because you said it wouldn't have to be a whole thing for it to count.
Correct. Interesting discussion that comes out of this. That's not actually in our Siman, but it's brought up in the Pischei Teshuvos. It's brought up in some of the commentaries on our Siman. I'm not sure if they're going to keep it in the summary, so I'll share it with you. But it's really from a different Siman, which is the question of, this is where the halacha actually comes up most commonly nowadays, is halacha finding a bug in your food. If there's a bug in your food, right?
Yeah.
So it's not going to be nullified because it follows all the criteria.
What if it's
It's kosher, not kosher from the time of its creation. It's a living thing.
Right.
It's whole. It's the kind of thing that if you cut it in half, it's going to be a half a bug. So what's all the criteria?
What if it's about half a buck?
Then it's going to be nullified by 60. Oh, first of all, if you find it, so let's go through this now before I get to what the interesting spin-off, right? If you find the barrier, what do you have to do?
Get rid of it.
You get rid of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now what are you left with? Not Iker. That's gone. You're left with Tam. The Tam could be nullified. It's only the barrier that can't be nullified. So if you find the bug, you remove the bug, and as long as you have 60 in the totality against the bug, which means you have 60 against the flavor, you're good to go. Furthermore, if a bug fell in, I can't find it now. So what happens?
So you can't.
As long as I have 60 and everything against it,
Yeah, if you're 60.
anything that's not the bug is okay. So certainly the liquid is going to be okay. Or as some of the halacha talk about, you can misan and you can sift through the liquid and let all the liquid pour out. You sift it through, so the barrier didn't come into your liquid, and that liquid's kosher as long as you have 60 to the ratio. Because now you're not looking at barrier, you're looking at tam. And tam you can nullify by
If a barrier completely dissolves in a soup, then it's fine if you have 60
correct.
against the top, whatever the
But you have to know that it dissolved.
Right,
You don't know that it dissolves. You can't do that unless you strain it.
right.
You'll know.
Okay.
Right? These are halachas that come out of this. That's going to be the whole siman, basically. Right?
What about?
It's pretty much the entire siman, what I just told you. All 4 sifim. But the various different details of that.
You said this one's a quick one.
Yeah, as the concept is one, and the next siman is going to be the same concept, as I'll explain. Okay? And even in some cases of doubt, we could also be lenient because it's rabbinic. Right? That's only if the reason why the Chachamim were, let's just explain, the Taz said this. The reason why the Chachamim were stringent by Beria is because Beria is unique, and that let's say a person eats a bug, it's less than a kazayas, he's still biblically reliable. Usually biblically only liable for kazayas, but by a Beria, even if it's less, so you see that the Torah itself gives status to Beria beyond the normal prohibition. So Chaylev, for example, is a good example of a contrast. Chaylev, you don't have to eat the whole chaylev to be liable. And if somehow there's a piece of chaylev that's less than a kazayas, you're not liable because it's not treated as a beria. But if you eat a bug that's less than,
I guess those strawberries are so problematic.
okay, but we're not learning halachas haloyim.
I'm just saying because they're whole bugs.
Correct. So because the Torah gives them extra prohibition that even though they're less than the shear, you're still liable because they are a beria. Therefore, the Chacham say, okay, beria is not nullified. Okay, so because it's only a rabbinic thing, therefore, if you're a suffix beria, you could be lenient. Okay. Other detail that I missed. Okay, that's one. Okay, so before I get to the next thing that I want to share, 2 more details that could come up in the siman, but there's an offshoot of this, which is an interesting offshoot, which comes like this. We're not learning the halachas of taloyim, the halachas of bugs and vegetables, but 2 details that come up from this. One directly in our Shulchan Aruch and one in the commentaries on the side. The one that comes up directly in the Shulchan Aruch is like this. If you cooked vegetables, right, and then you discovered 3 bugs in those vegetables. Okay, so you remove the bugs. But once you have 3, you assume there's more. So if you assume there's more, they got a bunch of berries in there. So you have to strain it. And the vegetables itself you wouldn't be able to eat. Even if you had tons. And there's nullification by 1,000. It's irrelevant because you got a bunch of berries in there. It's like hazakah of berries in there.
Let me check everything.
Okay, so the Shulchan Aruch mentions that with meat, you can wash it off and rinse it. So maybe you could do that. But it'd be very difficult to do that once your vegetables are cooked.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So you can strain it. And he says the meat, what does the Shulchan Aruch say? The meat, when it comes to the meat, you can wash it and check it, but the vegetables would be much more difficult to do. That's one offshoot that comes from this. The other is, that's not directly in the Shulchan Aruch, but it's an interesting one. So if you're familiar a little bit with the halachas of telayim, the halachas of bugs and animals. The halachas like this. The kind of bug that is that only comes into existence after the fruit is attached from the ground.
Larvae.
Certain kind of bugs are only come into existence when they're attached from the ground.
Attached to the
When they're detached from the ground, and they come into existence in the fruit.
Larva.
Now, those bugs are totally permissible.
Those are not bugs though. I think they're called worms.
The second they're whatever they are, they're insects.
Yeah.
The second they leave the fruit, now they become forbidden.
Oh.
Yeah, it's the halacha.
Meaning if
I'm
it
not
didn't
letting
come,
halacha to taloyim, that's the halacha.
you're saying if it comes organically
That's because of
from the ground,
spontaneous
Why is that? Because the Torah describes bugs that crawl on the ground that's forbidden. These bugs don't crawl on the ground until they leave the fruit. They weren't created on the ground and then went into the fruit. They're created in the fruit. If it was attached to the ground and they're created, then they're on the ground. If they're created after it's attached, meaning when it starts to rot, right? It's attached to the ground, it starts to rot. So certain insects arrive at that point. So it only becomes a problem when it leaves the fruit. Okay, I'm not learning halachas talayim to exactly identify what these things are, but that's the fact. So now, does that qualify? What?
Crazy.
That's halacha. Okay, does that qualify as a beria?
It should.
Why? Because all 4 criteria.
The whole thing.
It's a whole insect.
It wasn't usher from its creation.
Ah, so it's very good. It's whole. It is a living thing. It's the kind of thing, if you cut it in half, it would lose its status as a bug, but it doesn't qualify seemingly as the criterion which says that it's forbidden from the moment of its creation. That is indeed one opinion. That it's not considered a beria. The counter opinion says like this. Actually, before it came out of the fruit, halachically speaking, it wasn't considered anything. So its point of creation is the moment it came out of the bud, out of the fruit, and at that moment it became forbidden, and therefore it is a beria. It's not a machlekes that pops up on the side here. I'm not sure if it's going to be in the summaries. It's definitely not going to be in the text of the Shulchan Aruch because it's not in the Shach or the Taz, unless they put the Pischei Teshuvos in the corners, which I don't think they do. But it's just a fun little mental exercise I thought I wanted to share. Okay, so that is Sif Kof.
So
That's Siman Kof. That's chapter 100. Yeah, what do you want to say?
what is the practical difference between a full bug or half a bug?
A full bug will never be nullified. Half a bug will be nullified by 60.
The same way like you can have bugs in a smoothie because it gets ground, like you don't even have to check for bugs in these places.
There's a leniency there, yeah.
Right.
Okay, the halacha actually says we're going to learn that you cannot, even though the same thing going to be with Chatich Haroy Liskabit in the next siman, which is if it's ripped up, it no longer has its status
Right.
of not nullification, but you can't rip it up with the intention of nullifying it. Because we already learned in Isra Lechatchila, you can't nullify a prohibition in the first instance.
So then why does the Vad say it's totally okay?
Okay, because over there, it's not a certainty that there's going to be the bugs.
Suffix.
It's a suffix to begin with.
You wash your vegetables and you put them in a blender,
Oh, so
right?
in that case, because it's not a guarantee that there's bugs in there.
Uh,
Right? If there was a guarantee, you wouldn't be able to. Oh,
Okay.
good luck. Yeah.
So if you find a half bug, you don't have to take it out.
You have to take it out. But if half a bug fell in there and you can't find it, it's nullified.
also,
But if a full bug fell in there, you can't find it, it's not nullified. And you have to strain it to eat everything to make sure that the bug is not in what you're eating. Because it isn't nullified. Right? If there's a half bug that falls in there and you can't find it,
So what's I guess let's say you find the bug without the wings or something. Without
yeah, so
that constitutes as whole as I don't know.
because I was
It comes to halachas of Telaim. I don't know the answer to that question.
the issue of eating bugs is if it's whole. If you have a fly in your soup and it's missing a wing, and I don't remember where I saw this. So
I don't know halachas of Telaim. I'm not expert in that field. I'm not going to get into it. Okay. Siman Kuf Aleph, chapter 101. Same principle, that something which is of significant value doesn't get nullified. But here, what gives it significant value is not halachic in nature, as we just described in Kuf, where the halacha designates this thing as a self-contained thing because the Torah says that this item is going to be forbidden even though it doesn't match the shear. It's not going to be, you're going to be, you're going to be held culpable even though it doesn't have a kazayis because you're eating the entire self-contained entity. That was Kuf. So it's a halachic designation of significance. Kuf it's going to be a tangible significance, namely, which is a piece that is worthy of honor, or as they said, probably a better translation, is worthy of serving somebody. So it's the kind of thing that you would serve to someone on its own. You would serve a significant, important guest. It is not nullified by 60, by any ratio. Okay. Which means, just practically speaking, that means the difference between a minute steak versus a little sliver of stir fry. You're not going to serve someone one sliver of stir fry, but you will serve someone a minute steak. Right? You would do that. You'll put a little sliver of a stir fry and then put a kugel next to it. But you put a minute steak in it and exactly, and a rice on the side or something like that. Okay.
Sure.
So the minute steak, therefore, if it falls into a masa stew, not nullified. Okay, so let's go through some of the limitations of this idea. So let's see.
So Mr. Red, you're talking about like a quantity that's worthy of being standing on its own, basically.
And not quantity, an item.
I know it's an item, but I'm saying in terms of like meat, you're saying it's a certain quantity. It's certainly like it's too small, and it's not something. It's not a meal. It's not something you eat. Like you need more than to qualify.
You serve it to somebody else.
Exactly.
I might, on my own, because I'm hungry, I'll open my fridge and take one piece of stir fry.
Sure. That's
But exactly, because I just don't have to pick a piece of stir. I'll do that, but I'm not going to do that for my guest.
Right.
Right, so
you
it's
won't
gonna-
serve it. You won't serve it to something.
correct. That's what it comes down to. Serving something, not something that would be eaten alone.
Right. I'm saying
Eaten alone, you
serving.
can do a lot of things alone.
Exactly.
Serving,
Serving.
very good. Okay. So here too, the Gemara has a similar similar idea that if I know which piece it is, I take it out, and now I'm left with tam, I'm left with flavor, I nullify by 60, which would mean if I know it's a piece of meat that fell in there, but in the stew, there's also potatoes and vegetables and everything else, and I have 60 to the ratio of the piece of meat. So maybe all the pieces of meat I can't eat because my one piece of meat is nullified, but the potatoes and the stew and everything else, I may eat that because it's nullified by 60. It's only tam, it's not ikr, and that's fine. It's the same thing as straining it to get rid of your beria. It's the same kind of a thing. As long as I know I'm not eating that chaticha, I know I'm not eating that piece, and everything else I have 60 against what the piece would be, 'cause I don't know which one it is, because 1 minute steak amongst 50. Right, but my potatoes,
Yeah.
I have 60 to the ratio of one piece of minute steak. 60 to the ratio against the biggest minute steak. You once learned that, remember?
Right.
So I have 60 to the ratio against the biggest piece of minute steak. So now my potatoes are fine. And the broccoli, everything else is fine. Because then it's a question of tam, not the actual chaticha, and therefore it would be okay.
That's a big fan of falafel.
Sorry?
That's a big fan of falafel.
Yeah.
So when
Yeah. Still.
so,
Yes. Here's even further. Shulchan Aruch is going to tell us that even if, who am I serving this piece of meat to? Who am I serving this piece of meat to?
your guess.
It's not kosher. Which guest?
So no one. The
Oh,
goat.
the goy. So the definition of a piece of meat that's worthy, or a piece of food that's worthy of serving to a guest is if I have a non-Jewish guest. Because it's not a kosher piece of food, right? Okay. So what happens if this piece of food is forbidden by Hana? I'm not even going to have benefit from it. It's milk and meat, or it's a piece of meat that's absorbed milk in it. So it's Hanan. It's an original piece of prohibited food. Yeah.
Could you have a goy taste every single piece of meat?
1 second. No, but now it fell into a much bigger stew. He's not going to taste it at all. Right? Because the flavor has been nullified. It's the piece of meat that hasn't been nullified. Yeah. Now I couldn't even serve it to a non-Jew. Yet still, it's considered chaticha or liskabit. It's still considered a piece that I would serve to a guest. How? Because if it were to be nullified, if there was no such
Issue.
if there was no such decree by the sages that you cannot nullify chaticha or liskabit, and I was serving all these 100 pieces of minute steak, that piece would be served alone.
Yeah.
Even though before it fell in, I wouldn't have given it to anybody because it's forbidden by Hana, and I can't even give it to the non-Jew. Right? Therefore, if it were to be so, on its own, I wouldn't give it to anybody.
Right.
But if it were to be nullified in this full mixture, I would have given it to somebody because I would be serving each person one piece of minute steak, and that piece of minute steak would have ended up on somebody's plate, and thus it's not nullified. Even though before it fell in there, I would never serve to anybody. I can't. It's not allowed for me to serve to anybody. So it still has the status of a chaticha or liskabit, and therefore not nullified. Clear?
So I guess all the pieces of meat.
So all the pieces of meat can't be served to anybody. The rest of the stew is okay as I have 60 to the ratio of the biggest piece of meat. Very good. Even if the prohibition is rabbinic, even if it's min b'minoy, min b'she'enim, it makes a difference. If you're not sure that this thing is royal liskabed, what would you say? Lenient, because the whole thing is rabbinic, so I'm not sure if it's royal liskabed. If this thing is a doubt for prohibition, if what makes it prohibited is of a doubt, then I do apply the standard of chaticha or liskabed that it can't be nullified. But if I'm not sure if it's a chaticha or liskabed to begin with, then we go lenient. Likewise, what would you think of this? If this piece of meat is not prohibited on its own, it's not chanan. Well, let's rephrase that. I kind of give away the answer a little bit. let's say the piece of meat is not absorbent of milk. Well, everybody says it's chanan. Let's say it's only absorbent of non-kosher fat. will it be nullified or not?
Non-kosher fat. You get a benefit from that.
But it's fine. Like, dude, is it nullified? So it's a piece of meat that's a chatik or liskabed, totally kosher, but now it absorbed non-kosher fat, and now it fell into the rest of the pot. Could it be nullified by 60?
And I guess it's not 60 from the meat to the fat.
No 60 from the meat to the fat. So the meat is non-kosher, and then this piece of meat that it's absorbent of non-kosher fat falls into my big stew.
Well,
Is it nullified or not?
You can also do like how much fat was like left on the thing against the whole stew.
Is that true? No.
Your stew's fine.
Is it? No.
Depends about the meat.
What do I have to have 60 against? Again, I have a piece of meat, kosher. Non-kosher fat is
Just
absorbed.
against the fat.
Sorry?
Just against the fat.
60 against the fat. Everybody agrees with that?
Does it be
No.
60 times the kosher amount
What?
of
What?
food?
Not everyone.
Who says what? No, tell me.
The Ramas.
No.
Oh yeah.
This is the machlekes, whether or not Hanan
Yeah.
by Yisurim.
Sorry.
Right.
Oh,
we're talking
so
about,
if
right.
it's milk and meat, everybody agrees piece of meat became Hanan.
Yeah.
So you have to have 60 to the ratio of the whole piece of meat.
Uh-huh.
And therefore, if this piece of meat fell into a pot,
Yeah.
it's Chatucher or Liskabed, all the meat would be forbidden.
Yes.
Great. But if it's a piece of meat that was absorbent of non-kosher, so only according to the Ramah, it's Hanan.
Right. According to the Mechaber, it's fine.
According to the Mechaber, for sure it's not going to be, you can nullify. So long as you have 60 to the ratio of the fat that was in the meat, you're totally fine. But according to the Ramah, you have to have 60 to the ratio of the meat, not to the ratio of the fat that was absorbed in the meat. So does that mean now that this is a Chaticha Roy Liskabed?
No.
But how are we even having the discussion of Hatika Roilis Kabed by a piece of meat that was kosher from the beginning?
It's not Beria.
Oh, that's only by Beria, those
Only by
four?
Beria. Only by
Okay.
Beria that standard applies because it's a halachic designation.
Right.
This thing was forbidden from the time. Here it's a question of whether or not I would serve it to somebody. I would serve this piece.
Yeah.
And it's absorbent of non-kosher fat. And it falls into my stew. So that piece of meat, according to the Ramah, is Hanan. And I have to have 60 in the pot, not against the fat in the meat, but I have to have 60 to the ratio of the meat itself.
Yeah.
But do I say it's Chaticha or Liskav, now all the meat's not kosher?
No.
Answer is no. Even though the Ramah applies the standard of Hanan. Following the Chiddush here? Yes or no?
I still have 3 classes to catch up to, so
No, this is something you learned before these classes. You know Hanan is Bashar Yisurim, yes? Machlekes and Mechaber Ramah. Whether or not you say Hanan by milk and meat only, or even when meat's absorbed of other things. Right?
Okay.
Ramah says it is Hanan. Which means a piece of meat that's absorbed with the fat, it falls into another stew. I have to have 60 to the ratio, not just of the fat, like the Machaber would say. I have to have 60 to the ratio of the meat itself.
Yeah.
The Ramah would say. Because the meat itself is treated as non-kosher, not just as absorbent of non-kosher. And yet, it doesn't turn it into the kind of Chaticha or Liskabed that would never be nullified. So as long as I have 60 to the ratio of the piece of meat, every piece of meat is kosher. Even though one of the pieces of meat, which is absorbent of the non-kosher, is really a Liskabed.
And also because Tom is gone. There's no flavor.
Tom is gone.
There's no flavor.
So Hanan is only in
And
terms
the
of
and the
how
truth-
much, right. So Hanan in the Ramah is only in terms of how much do I require in the stew to nullify it, but not in terms of turning this into something that's in perpetuity prohibited, such that it can't even be nullified by
It has to be
Chabayit.
an accident, though, right? It can't be on purpose.
Yes, all this is by accident. Yeah. Okay, I hope that was clear.
That is fair. That's actually very not likely, but it's-
Okay. If something is prohibited by a klipa, what do you say? So it's a piece of meat, hot milk falls on it. Tata gavar, because it's cold.
Yeah.
So it doesn't absorb all the way through the piece of meat. Only this peel
Yeah.
is considered milk and meat.
Right. You didn't have
And that piece of meat now falls into a stew
before you cut off the top.
before I cut the top. So the piece of meat is a royal escape. The piece of meat is worthy of serving to somebody.
You're fine.
But it's not prohibited all the way through, only prohibited by a
I
sliver.
think it's fine.
Why is it fine? Answer, you're correct, but why?
Because the piece of meat, it has like it gets nullified. That thing, it's
Almost, no? Because
Sliver's
is the
enough.
prohibited
you
part
don't have to take a kedai klipa from it?
I do.
Okay, so
But then it fell into a pot. And I have 60 to the ratio of that klipa in the rest of the pot. The question is, does this piece of meat have the status of that which is never nullified because it's worthy of serving somebody?
Yeah, 60 times.
That's royal escape.
60 times a piece of meat, you should be fine.
I have 60 times the klipa. I don't even need
Right.
60 times I don't even need 60 times the whole piece of meat.
Become chaticha.
Right, because
But doesn't become a chaticha or royal escape. It doesn't become the kind of piece that's worthy of serving. It is the kind of piece that's worthy of serving.
Yeah.
And therefore, does it never get nullified?
No, it gets.
Which means all the meat in that
No,
stew
no,
is not kosher?
It's fine.
Why?
It's fine. Piece was fine. Piece was kosher.
Because The prohibited part is not royal iskabit. I would never peel it off and serve someone the peel.
Right. Oh, that's why. That's
The prohibited stuff is not royal iskabit. The prohibited
Right.
stuff is not worthy of service. It's only the fact that the prohibited entity is attached to something else that's worthy of service, worthy of serving somebody.
right. So if you cut this little.
So if I were to take a sliver, I would never serve someone a sliver of meat, a peel of meat.
Right.
So the part that is prohibited is not worthy of serving, and therefore it will be nullified. So long as I have 60 to that klipa, to that peel.
But in this case, would that type of meat become hanan because it's
No.
milk and meat?
No, only the
Sliver.
sliver is chanan. So I have to have 60 to the ratio of the full sliver, not just the milk observed in the sliver, right? Okay. What do you say about this? Piece of chicken. That's worthy of serving somebody.
Okay.
So it's royal iskabit. I would serve someone that piece of chicken. It's absorbent of milk.
It's not an issue. It's only a derabanan, so you don't have an issue with. I mean, you might have a.
Zero on zero.
So Takat's machlekes. One opinion says it's rabbinic.
Right.
You have two rabbinics here. You have the rabbinic, first of all, of chicken and milk. And on top of that, another rabbinic to say that because it's something worthy of honor, it's not going to be nullified. So we're going to nullify it. One opinion. Counter opinion. Because we say that even milk and chicken becomes chanan. So I can't just nullify the milk. I have to nullify the chicken that has the milk in it. Therefore, because it itself is the prohibited thing, it does have chaticha or iskabit, and all the chicken would be no good. Machlekes.
What do we hold?
I don't know. We'll find out on Wednesday when we do Chazar Lamaisa. So it's machlekes.
Okay.
Okay.
Being
There's also discussion about cheese, whether or not cheese is considered worthy of serving. Like, do you serve a piece of cheese on its own?
if you're
So it
French,
depends what kind.
You,
So this is going to be very subject to the realities of life.
Cheese. It's a platter of cheese.
but it could
Oh.
just be one also, like a fondue or
Ah.
a brie.
So it depends on what kind of cheese.
It's a whole brie.
Yeah.
Correct.
That's fine. It's a whole brie.
So
So it's not a
it's
small piece.
Correct.
You're gonna serve someone a little
Correct.
piece and say, "Here's
No. So if you have a piece of cheese that's non kosher,
a small little piece."
no, whole piece.
That's worthy of serving, though.
Okay.
The whole thing is worthy of serving.
So here's the funny thing. There are limitations on this, and this is going to become Siv Gimel, Dalet, and Hay, which is, okay, I'm not going to give you all the details because you'll see, but here's the bottom line. It doesn't have to be the kind of thing that's worthy of serving right now, or is the kind of thing that if I were to prepare it properly would be worthy of serving. Say, for example, I have the leg of a lamb,
so good.
delicious, but it still has the hair on it. It still has the skin on it. I haven't salted it and haven't cooked it.
Okay.
Is that considered royal iskabit?
I
And I'll give you a very practical scenario, not for us, but if you're working in a schlachters. Yeah. So they shechted 100 lamb today. Okay. And they discover that one lamb had a punctured heart. So it's treifa.
Right.
So what they do is they have to collect all the pieces of that lamb
Right.
and throw it out.
Right.
They can't find one leg.
Wow.
So there's one leg is now mixed in a bunch of other lamb.
But it's still kosher though. It's just not glass.
It's treifa. And it's not naglat. It's totally treif. Not glat. Totally treif. A full hole in the heart. I don't know, whatever. Full hole in the keva, whatever the thing is. It's a full treifa. Okay? So now there's a lamb bone, a lamb leg that's mixed into
The kosher.
hundreds of pieces of kosher lamb.
Wow.
What do? Is it royal iskabit? And if all that lamb is no good, that's not nullified even by 1,000?
I think I remember learning this in Chulin. This is
No. What do you say? Is it royal iskabit or not? When I prepare it, it's definitely going to be royal iskabit. It's going to be worthy of serving someone a lamb leg. But at the moment, it's not, because I got to get rid of the wool. I got to salt it. I have to
this concept.
cook it.
Yes.
So it's not worthy of serving now.
It's inedible now.
So there are actually 4 opinions in this regard, from the more stringent to the most lenient. On the most stringent, then you have the Rosh, mentioned in the Shulchan Aruch. Taz explains it, which is so long as there's the volume. This is the point you were making earlier. As long as you have the volume of that which would be worthy of serving, even though I can't now because it requires preparation, it's still not nullified, and all that lamb is going to be thrown out or given to a non-Jew. Isn't that crazy?
Definitely a lamb leg is worthy of serving.
Huh?
So definitely a lamb leg is worthy of serving, quantity wise.
100%. I actually didn't have the shiloh, but I once went to the Square Dine here for Shimush.
shimush.
like a rabbinical practice.
Okay.
I went there to look at to look at some matters, like need the questions. So when I was there, with a bunch of other young guys, and he throws out these questions just to like engage and tell us about what's going on. So he said, Taka, that they found there was one piece of meat that wasn't salted properly, that got lost. I think that was the case. That got lost in a bunch of other pieces of meat. What should they do? So Itaka said, it's royalist kabit. It's kind of piece of meat that's
I know
Tot-
what you could do. You could chop it all up to make it not royalist kabed.
you can't nullify a prohibition to begin with, right? Which would you be doing if you chop it up? It's going to come up in the Siman, right? So he explains, he said that it's not royalist kabit. I'm sorry, it is royalist kabit. It's not nullified by any amount. Plus, you couldn't, even if you wanted to, apply hefsid meruba. Great monetary loss. Why? Because sell it to non-Jew, you get your profit.
All right, you'll make less profit or something.
Yeah, you don't made no major loss there. So you wouldn't allow it.
There's only a loss in the community. Right.
Not even lost the community. The consumers, the Jewish community, consumers don't even know what happened. They don't know what happened. They kept them slaughtering the next day or the next afternoon.
Right.
I think that was the case. It was non-salted meat, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
No, it wouldn't have been non-salted meat because that's something else. Maybe it was a treifa taka. I don't remember, but he relied on this. He's indicating this thing. Okay, so that's on one extreme. One extreme is that as long as the volume is the kind that would be served, even though now I can't, it's still never nullified. The rush. But then there are different opinions as to how much preparation is required before I say it's no longer worthy of serving. So one opinion says, if I remove let's say it's a chicken, so I removed all the feathers, I haven't salted it yet, it's still considered worthy of serving. Because I got rid of the feathers. Another opinion says, well, you got to cut it up first, and then I'm going to say it's worthy of serving, even though you haven't cooked it yet. And the other opinion says, no, only if I could serve it right now, which means it's been cooked and it's ready for service, then I say it's considered worthy of serving and it's not nullified. Right? So you have varying degrees of how much sorry?
Who's the most lenient?
Rosh to Ramban.
Okay.
Ramban is the most lenient. So, and the Shulchan Aruch is going to bring us the whole gamut, and the Ramah especially. The Shulchan Aruch itself is going to give us two extremes, and then the Ramah is going to give us details on, like, did you remove the feather from the chicken? Did you not remove the feather? If you remove the feather, then it's closer to being ready for service and therefore could not be nullified. The feather's still there, it's too far away from being ready to serve, and therefore isn't nullified. Right? He's going to go through various different details of that. Okay.
The number one thing is quantity.
And the same thing's going to be by those chicken legs. Like I give the example of a lamb leg, same thing. What about lamb head?
Yeah.
Chicken leg. So yes, no. The Ramah says, so this is where actually the Taz writes that depends on the colloquial culture. Because the Ramah, for example, writes that in our countries, a chicken leg is not the kind of thing that you would serve somebody. So forget it. It's nullified. Right?
Yeah.
It's not something you would serve. But so he's Ramah clearly is making it subject to our culture. We don't do that. Right?
Right.
What if the culture we could do it?
On our culture, a leg and a thigh is considered one portion.
Chicken leg? Not a chicken. Oh, chicken. Oh, yeah. No, I mean chicken.
The leg thigh.
Sorry, chicken feet. Not the pulka.
Oh, feet. No.
The pulka you would serve.
Yeah.
Like the chicken thigh. But the chicken leg, mamish the chicken foot.
Oh, the foot.
Chicken feet.
Oh.
She says, nah, that's not the kind of thing. So this is where it comes in, this is where culture comes into play, if this is the kind of thing that you would serve to a guest or not.
It's not even a thing you.
Right.
Would you serve someone a single chicken wing nowadays?
No, that's not.
Good question.
That's not.
Good question.
You
Would
would
you
never
serve someone
serve
chicken?
somebody one chicken wing.
No.
No,
I-
that's actually a fed.
Actually,
How does it work? Like if you bring up,
Chicken wing, that's a
It's a
fed-
good question.
is it only if you serve it like that, or like if you're bringing a plate of chicken wings to the table, and somebody could take one, somebody could take 10? Is
No,
that called?
you're serving that person.
It has to be
Yes.
one
And
item
then,
to one person.
yes. And there are shal rights, and it's brought down to the Prima Godim that it's for not just regular guests, it's for honored guests. So the kind of people you have every day in your house,
That changes a lot of things.
changes a lot of things. So that's why, because you asked about the chicken wings, I don't think you had a significant guest you'd serve them one chicken wing.
You had a
I really don't think so.
chicken wing. I'd be so. That's
On the other hand, I'm just going to put out another counter argument. Maybe our friend Suckim and Chivas, when we get on Wednesday, will give us more insight. I'll just throw a counter argument. If you're serving, let's say, you're doing a full barbecue,
Yeah.
right? And you'll make a person a presentable plate that includes in it
One.
one hot dog, one chicken wing, one slider, 3 slivers of steak, and a kebab.
Mixed grill.
Quantity.
Mixed grill.
Mixed grill.
So maybe then you would serve one chicken wing. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. I don't know the answer to the
That
question.
sounds.
I'm just throwing it out there.
That makes sense
But
though.
no,
Right?
that does not make
You're
sense.
not going to serve,
No.
well, even on that mixed grill,
Right.
you're not going to serve one slice of a stir fry. That you're not going to do. But one chicken wing, maybe. If you have the
Right,
right? I don't know.
till now,
Throw it out there.
till now, we've been talking about serving it on its own to a person. So
On its own, you don't mean more of that thing.
Mixed grill, you throw everything out of the water.
If you do a mixed grill,
Then someone is
you're
getting
still never going to give a guy one slice of stir fry. That's not happening.
but is it on its own as the main thing? So it's different if you're going.
No, not
Would
necessarily.
you serve
No.
it? You would do that, yes, but you wouldn't serve a chicken wing with mashed potatoes on the side and
No,
a
you
fork
wouldn't
and
do
a
that.
knife. And yeah.
So I don't know. So it's possible. I'm just putting a counter argument that maybe it is something that you would
I
serve something.
don't like that argument. I don't like that mixed grill because that's you're just at quality then. You're just having a little bit of everything.
Right, but there's still certain things you would never do. You're never going to give the person one
Okay, well,
kernel
well,
of rice. You're never going to
It's
give them one sugar of chicken.
But in that example, it's only royally scabed because it's part of the whole team of meat on your plate.
Fine, that's fine. Let's just okay in that team of meat, right? And let's say you have you made a big steak and you sliced it into slivers.
Yeah.
You're not going to put one sliver on that person's
Like
plate.
2 or 3 slivers.
So it's not really scabed. But the chicken wing, you will put
But I would
one.
never serve someone 3 slivers of meat as a.
You would put 3 slivers of meat. You would put a chicken wing, a
100%.
slider, and a hot dog.
Yeah.
Right. So
It's a
then,
good question.
so there, your chicken wing there becomes more significant than the 1 sliver of steak. Because the 1 sliver of steak, you're not going to do. You're going to put 3.
Yeah.
Chicken wing, you can put 1. So I don't know the answer to the question. I'm just throwing out the argument.
No, but you guys, I'm getting hungry.
Okay.
Who's doing a barbecue tonight?
Okay, so there's going to be some details about preparing meat. I mentioned chicken. Okay, that's pretty much the whole Siman. The last thing is, which we already mentioned, that if it's shredded, then it's no longer really liskabed, even if it was. Right, so if it fell into the stew, and then it got blended, and then after you blended it, you discovered that one of the pieces was non-kosher, it could be nullified by 60, because right now it's not worthy of serving, and it was blended by accident, because if you did it on purpose, you're nullifying a prohibition on purpose. You don't have to do that. And I think that's pretty much the entire two Simanim. So in very brief, so if you recap everything, we had 2 caveats to when things cannot be nullified, both for the same reason, but for 2 different offshoots. They're not nullified because they are significant, either significant halachically, because Torah says this item you'd be liable for it, even though it's not the full amount, and therefore never nullified because it's a barrier, it's a self-contained entity with the 4 conditions. Or it's the kind of piece of food that would be worthy of serving to a guest on its own, and there are various different discussions on that. Doesn't mean it's worthy of serving right now, or it's got to be worthy of serving later. We have to take cultural circumstances into consideration, and I think that pretty much covers everything. Okay, so it's technically a lot on the page, but you can really get through it in 1 hour on your own. Read through it; it's very straightforward once you have this background. Okay, wonderful day, good luck, everybody. God willing, we'll answer hopefully some of these practical questions.
I think all this talk about barbecue and chicken wings and Adam is
Locked off. Snow or not snow, morning or not morning, I'm happy to have a barbecue.
Exactly.
Have a great day, everybody.
So what if you could figure out where the leg was?
It's still an hour share though.
Oh, I should remember, because there's going to be an example where you can do that. The Shulchan Aruch is going to bring an example where
It's in this section.
no.
This section?
Where
Speaking
let's say you
randomly or
found let's say you found
black.
the example is like this. You found non-kosher fat attached to a intestine, and the intestine itself is a treifa. So everything in that animal is not going to be non-kosher.
Isn't it chatichas nati levela?
Sorry?
Isn't that chatichas nati nevela? Because a piece of non-kosher is attached
Yeah.
to kosher.
Yeah, 100%. So it's a treifa. So the entire chicken's no good. But I got to go find the chicken breast, and I got to find everything. I got to find the rest of the chicken.
Oh, okay, I see.
Right? So he says there, I think this is the example, where there's certain types of fat that look the same in chicken. So if I can take that piece and go to all the other chicken and compare it, and I find the chicken that has the exact match fat, then I can keep all the rest of the chickens and throw that one out, because I have a way of identifying it. Another example is you find a head that's not that's a treifa, So I take the head and I go to all the other lamb that I have and I attach it and I see if the attaches match. Right? Like a jigsaw.
Yeah.
Right? And I can say, oh, this is the right one. So this lamb is not kosher, the rest of the lamb are kosher. If there's a way of identifying, but it's more than halachas of treifa, not so much the halachas here. It's mentioned in passing here because it gets you out of the chatikh the skabed issue. Because if I can identify which piece of meat.
Do you go over the laws of treifa for this? No.
For smicha?
Yeah.
No. I never went through the laws, except for the Rambam. I never heard of the halachas of treifa. But here it comes up. So good point. Yes, if you can match the treifa piece to the rest of the item, then you would be able to remove that, just remove that chicken, or remove that treifa and keep the rest.
Yes.
Good point. Okay, wonderful day, buddy. Good luck.